I'm Andrew Murata, host of the Education, Leadership, and Beyond podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you are listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hey, have I got something cool for you to check out? Behind the Mic, Voices of the EPN, an inspiring and engaging podcast brought to you by the Education Podcast Network and hosted by EPN's founder, Christopher J. Nessie. So much cool stuff to learn. You're going to have fun listening. Check it out now. Hey, welcome back. Steve here, and today I'm talking with Ed Hess. Ed has spent over 20 years in the business world and joined academia in 2002. He has written 15 books, and his focus is typically, on high individual and organizational performance. Today, we are focused on one of his latest books. It's called Own Your Work Journey, The Path to Meaningful Work and Happiness in the Age of Smart Technology and Radical Change. What a powerful book. What a powerful talk. You're going to love it. Thanks so much for listening. And oh, by the way, before you go, it'd be so cool if you went to my website, stephenmiletto.com/reviews, and left a review. Could you do that for me? What do you think? 5 stars and maybe some really nice words. That would be so cool. You are awesome. Enjoy the show.
It's the Education Podcast, your favorite show, with lots of groovy guests and they share what they know. So crank it up to 10 and let your neighbors know that here's another show with Dr. Steve Miletto. Teaching, learning, leading, K-12. Teaching, learning, leading, K-12. Teaching, learning, leading, K-12. With Dr. Steve Miletto.
Edward D. Hess is a professor emeritus of business administration, Batten Faculty Fellow, and Batten Executive in Residence Emeritus at the Darden School of Business, University of Virginia. He received his BS from the University of Florida, his JD from the University of Virginia, and his L.L.M from New York University. Professor Hess spent more than 20 years in the business world as a senior executive at Warburg Paribas Becker, Boettcher & Company, the Robert M. Bass Group, and Arthur Andersen. He joined academia in 2002 as an adjunct professor of organization and management at the Goizueta School of Business at Emory University, where he taught in the business undergraduate and MBA programs and was the founder and executive director of both the Center for Entrepreneurship and Corporate Growth and the Values-Based Leadership Institute. In 2007, he joined the faculty of the Darden Graduate School of Business as professor of business administration and the first Batten executive in residence. He has taught in the MBA and EMBA programs in over 21 executive education programs at Darden, IESE Barcelona, the Indian School of Business, Georgia Tech, and AVT Denmark. He is the author of 14 other books and well over 160 practitioner articles and over 60 Darden cases, etc., dealing with innovation and learning cultures, systems, and processes. The common theme of his work is high individual and organizational performance. He is a certified Marshall Goldsmith stakeholder-centered coaching coach. Our focus today is his book, Own Your Work Journey, The Path to Meaningful Work and Happiness in the Age of Smart Technology and Radical Change. Ed, welcome and thanks for joining me today, and say hi to everyone.
Thank you very much for having me, and hello everyone, and thank you for being here with us.
Well, glad to have you here, and what a cool book you've written, and timely, and I think everyone needs to read this book. Ed, why did you write your book, Own Your Work Journey, The Path to Meaningful Work and Happiness in the Age of Smart Technology?
I wrote this book to help people from all walks of life be able to have meaningful work and happiness in the age of smart technology and radical change. The age of smart technology is here. Artificial intelligence smart technology has become very smart. GPT-4 is very smart, and what's coming after, GPT-5, GPT-6, GPT-7 will be even smarter. We're now in a new game of work. People will have work going forward if they can add value in ways that the smart technology can't. And this is really heightened because we will live in the most disruptive work time since the Great Depression. Technology is going to automate blue and white collar jobs. Everyone will have to adapt. The best research out there by Oxford University predicts 25 to 47% of the U.S. jobs will be automated by 2030. 25 to 47% of jobs by 2030.
Wow.
The best scientists have predicted that the average person will have 5 completely different jobs in the next 20 years. So what does this mean? We all have to learn how to be highly adaptive learners who can learn, unlearn, and relearn at the speed of technological change. That is how you will continue to have good jobs. That is how you will stay relevant. And no one will be exempt. Factory workers, service workers, hourly workers, self-employed people, doctors, nurses, engineers, leaders, managers, technologists, entrepreneurs. You and I will have work if we can do the task that add value in ways that the technology can't. That's really where we are. And so if you ask the question, okay, so what's the problem? Well, we are the problem because we are not wired to be highly adaptive learners. Okay, most of us have not learned how to be a highly adaptive learner. We are wired, our brains are wired to go out in the world and seek confirmation of what we believe. Confirmation of what we believe. Affirmation of our ego and cohesiveness of our story about how our world works. All of that inhibits you and me from becoming a highly adaptive learner, someone who can basically learn, unlearn, and relearn at the speed of technological change. And I wrote this book to give you the tools and practices that will help you be on your journey to best self, which enables you to become a highly adaptive learner and have meaningful work in this era of smart technology.
It's so powerful because, we're at such a time frame in which, like what you talked about, the idea that we want affirmation. A lot of what we do or try to do, there's some sort of push behind us, or there's a reason for why we do it. If you have some sort of a computer that doesn't have those, let's take for example, like, sometimes when you come up with ideas, there's someone who's always against it, good or bad. Well, if the computer's not dealing with those sorts of things, those sorts of obstacles, they just do what they're programmed or taught to do. I would think that would shorten down the time of dealing with some stuff.
Yes, exactly right. And then the computer so far is not emotion. All right. And our emotions are one of the key things that sort of get in our way of being a good learner. We want to be liked by other people. We want we want to be feel good, and etc. We want to be competitive, and we want to win. Sort of how we're raised to get the the good grade, to get the big star put on your head, so to speak. And the computers, they don't have all this human stuff. That's big opportunity for us humans. The fact they don't have all the human stuff. All right. It's pretty clear, though, the technology is moving into the human stuff. If you just look at the history of social media, technology's been able to hack emotions in people. Technology's been able to impact your emotions, to impact how you feel about each other, to feel about how you feel about yourself. So technology has the power to impact you, but technology itself doesn't have emotions. And emotions will be one of the key things that will differentiate us, but also emotions are one of the most difficult things for us to deal with.
What's really crazy about this is just how quickly we're at this stage, and because, for a little bit, it was something that was going to happen, that a long time ago in the late 50s and so forth. There's all these books and movies about the giant computer that's going to take over the world and dominate us. And then, for a while, there's the idea that the different shows like Star Trek, and then later there's a movie or two about things like war games, where the possibility that the computer does its own controlling of the missiles and launches the missiles when things get confused. And, the funny thing is that in those days, I'm not so sure we really had that ability for that type of stuff to happen. Now I'm not so sure. It's you wonder a little bit about what can happen when you ask a question and you watch the computer type in front of you come up with a recipe for meatloaf. The person who's going to be able to do well in this smart technology age, what's going to help them get there?
That's a great question.
Okay.
And the end result is to become a highly adaptive learner. And we have to accept the fact that we have not been taught or learned how our brain works. And we've not really, most of us, been taught how to take ownership of what goes on inside of our body, how to take ownership of our ego, our mind, our body itself, our emotions, how we listen, how we think, how we build caring, trusting relationships with others. We are wired. This is the science. This is not Ed Hess. This is science. We are wired to go out in the world to seek confirmation of what we believe, affirmation of our ego. We all want pats on the head, and cohesiveness of our stories, how our world works. So if you think about it, our natural way of being is to seek confirmation, affirmation, cohesiveness. That's not the roadmap to being a highly adaptive learner. That's the roadmap to being left behind, all right? In the sense that we're not going to learn at the speed of change unless we overcome that wiring and learn different ways to work, to behave, to learn. We're also emotionally, we strive to be right instead of striving to learn. All of this inhibits becoming a highly adaptive learner. That's why I say in the book, your biggest competition in this new world of smart technology will be you, not others. You have to take ownership of yourself in order to become a highly adaptive learner. And that ownership of yourself, right, allows you to bring your best self to the table, to work, to life every day. And so the journey here is a personal journey. How do you learn? How do you learn to bring your best self to work every day? By taking ownership of your ego, your mind, your emotions, how you listen, how you think, how you build relationships to other people. And training yourself to do that is the way that you can basically have a good opportunity to become a highly adaptive learner. And this is not something that's easy, because if you, Steve, said something, that, hey, Ed, I don't understand why you believe this. Please help me understand. All right. A person's normal way of reacting to that emotionally is immediately to think, I'm being attacked. I need to defend or deflect, instead of saying, that's a good question. Let me try and explain what I think, but I'm open to what, you helping me think better. I mean, how many times has anybody listening to us, how many times have you had a conversation in the business world when you have asked anybody, hey, help me think better. This is what I'm thinking. What am I missing? And being open to not identifying, not getting your jollies out of being the smartest person in the room. And this is especially important for men because the science shows that women generally are better collaborators than men are, right? And so, we get back to the ego. Everybody wants to look good. Everybody wants to be, thought of as good. And if we get so wrapped up into that, you can't step back and become a highly adaptive learner. Does any of that make sense, Steve?
Oh, it makes perfect sense. It's especially because this is a lot of times I would think that this is where, that like competition comes into play, where people are not necessarily really competing, but they're making it a competition because they don't want to be outdone by somebody else, or they don't want to be looked upon as if they don't know.
Yeah, you're exactly right. People view it as, as combat, as battle, as competition. And the fact is that none of us are going to be able to be as smart technology. We have to focus on what are the types of ways of thinking, all right, that we can do that the technology can't do, all right? And what are the types of ways of being are we going to be able to do the technology can't do? And so that's we're not going to beat the technology. We're going to have to basically learn how to continuously adapt and be able to do the types of things the technology cannot do well. And that is basically thinking differently than the technology can think, emotionally engaging in positive ways with other human beings, right? Those are the two big ways, right? The two big differentiators that we're going to have. The third differentiator is for workers whose job requires them to go in to try to understand what's wrong with a machine or something and have to iterate and discover the problem. And then when a worker has to, this is an unusual problem, I'm going to try this and see if this works. And then if that doesn't work, I'm going to try this. And so iterative exploring the problem and iterative trying to fix the problem, especially in trade jobs, is going to be very hard for the smart machines to do. So if you come down to it is, I got to think in a way that the technology can't think. I have to basically be able to connect with people emotionally since technology can't do it. And if I'm in a trade job, which will be jobs that will be very valuable, if I'm in a trade job where I have to basically constantly figure things out and test them and also have human dexterity. Other than that, there's not going to be a lot of room. That's why the numbers that we talked about before are so staggering that, we could be looking at automation as high as 47% of the people in the country by 2030.
It's amazing. That's just, I talk about something that many people would not be ready for. We've had the big quit, whatever you want to call it, the resignation or whatever, only to find out that, some of these companies are trying to find different ways because, their hand's been forced into increasing pay. At the same time, the technology is getting better about being able to do some jobs that, Maybe all you need now is a person to make sure that if it gets unstuck when it gets stuck, or, you push the button to reset it.
And this key about becoming a highly adaptive learner is it requires you to take ownership of what's going on inside of ourselves, our mind, our body, our emotions, how we think, and with this goal of best self requires you to constantly be okay. My competition is myself. Am I learning to be a better thinker, a better learner, better listener? Am I a good collaborator? How can I become better? Am I trying to be better than others, or am I trying to become my best self? Get rid of this competition stuff. It's a lot like, the concept of what it means to be smart and the need to have humility, all right, which is so important. And humility is founded in all of the great religions and all of the great philosophies. And psychologist June Price Tangy defines humility this way. And I know that there's lots of people listening, especially men, are going to hear the word humility and they have already shut down. Okay. That's sort of weakness. No, it's not. Humility in this new smart technology age is going to be a strength, right? Humility is the new smart. And the definition of humility in psychology is having an accurate view of your abilities and achievements, being able to acknowledge your mistakes, your imperfections, being open to new ideas, contradictory information, and advice, keeping one's abilities and accomplishments in perspective, and having a low focus on self. Humility helps us change the story about what it means to be smart. Every one of us who went to school, okay, wanted to be the smart person. And, smart people were the people that got ahead. And many times it became competitive. I had to be smarter than the other person. And this whole concept of smart is going to change now. In order to be a highly adaptive learner, you got to embrace new smart. And there are 5 principles to new smart. I'm defined not by what I know or how much I know, but by the quality of my thinking, listening, relating, and collaborating. That right there is mission critical to being a highly adaptive learner. My mental models, my stories, my world are not reality. They're only my stories of how my world works. Steve, your world works a different way, okay? That doesn't mean I'm right, you're wrong, or you're right, I'm wrong. It means we have to understand each other's story. I'm not my ideas. In other words, I'm just not all tied up into I'm the right one and everyone else is stupid. I must decouple my beliefs, not my values, from my ego. I must be open-minded and treat my beliefs as hypothesis to be tested and subject to modification by better data. And my mistakes and failures are opportunities to learn. So if you think about those 5 new smart principles and talking about humility and talk about big ego, right? And you think about what that does, all of that allows you to be more open-minded, more likely to discover new ways of doing things, more likely to be a good collaborator, more likely to be a better listener, and I think I said more likely to be a better thinker. All of this, when all of a sudden our competition is not each other, but it's smart technology. All of this requires us to, wait a minute, time out. The game has changed. The rules have changed. What got us here won't get us there. We've got to take ownership of ourselves. We've got to be on our journey to best self. We got to bring our best self every day so we can be a good thinker, a good learner, a good listener, a good teammate, a good collaborator. And especially I'm emphasizing the good collaborator because most work going forward is going to be dependent upon people being good collaborators with each other, because nobody's going to have the magic answer. The game has been elevated. The difficulty has been elevated. Does any of that make sense?
Oh, it very much does. It's something that I think a lot of us are not ready to deal with, in that, because I got to tell you, a big part of anything that I've been part of on my work journey is that you generally will run into somebody in a meeting who wants to have the last word because they're afraid that this is my thought about it, is that they're afraid that they'll look bad if they don't show all that they know. And
yes.
And that's, a lot of times that doesn't help you get the job done. Matter of fact, people start fearing for when that person raises their hand at the end of the meeting, not now, type of thing. And, and I think that, one of the things that, you're looking at when just as a, we have this, when we work together, it is so important that we figure out how to get beyond those types of little competitive situations, because, it's one thing to be trying to get to the finish first as a group, but it's a whole nother thing if you're trying to outdo, or, it's kind of like when I coached little kids soccer when they were 4 and 5 years old. One of the problems you have is that they're very concrete thinking at those times. And so the concept of pass the ball is not real to several of them, to many of them, because once they get the ball, they want to keep it. And I think moving to adulthood, that still happens in many people, is that I'm going to drive this home so I get the credit, or whatever. And I think that that's something that is very difficult to let go of.
Yeah. But that's part of the game. It's interesting. Over the years, I've given thousands of leaders that I've worked with a test to help them determine their learning weaknesses. And what's so fascinating, and these from people from all different types of jobs, military, business, education. When you look at the data that I was given, in other words, the number one weakness is the lack of humility, which in the lack of humility basically can be restated as big ego. All right. The research shows especially men have a big ego. They believe that what they think is the right answer, and they're not open to changing their mind or going to look for disconfirming information. They don't want to look bad. They don't want other people to think that they're not smart, which is just what you said. All right. I mean, big ego people it's all about me. All right. And having that big ego, you can't be a highly adaptive learner. You're going to be left behind, because being a highly adaptive learner enables open-mindedness, real listening, better thinking, building positive relationships with other people. And it's interesting. So the number one thing that people that I've worked with have had to work on is humility. The number two thing when they took their test was reflective listening. Actually listening to someone and trying to understand what they're saying without, thinking about your answer while they're talking, while, not talking to yourself saying that's stupid and looking at your devices. All right.
Right.
So humility and truly listening to somebody. And when somebody ends with their statement, not, leaning forward, okay, and punching up and telling them why they're wrong, but maybe instead saying, let me make sure I understand what you're saying. This is what I heard. You state what you heard. Am I hearing you correctly? Am I missing something? And many times that will create a conversation where both sides are working towards getting to the best answer instead of who wins. So this whole way of being, so that I'm just not so fragile. It's okay if I, don't know everything. And so I gotta basically change how I define myself. And that's what those 5 new SMART principles were about. And the building blocks to becoming your best self, that's why you got to take ownership of your ego and your mind. And we haven't talked about mind, and I'm sure we will in a moment, because that's very important. Just like taking ownership of your emotions, all right? Ownership of your behaviors. And so that's a new way. I mean, I don't know about you, and I don't know, I have granddaughters in school systems and everything. There's not a lot of conversation going on in schools about, okay, how do we take ownership of our ego, our mind, our body, our emotions, our behaviors, our listening, our thinking, and how we relate to other people? Because that's going to be the types of abilities that are going to make it easier for people to be a highly adaptive learner. And highly adaptive learners will have the best probability of having meaningful work and happiness in the age of smart technology.
It is so powerful, because one of the things that, not only do we need guidance on how we can become successful in it, we need guidance on how to stay in it, in this game, and to make our life become something productive again. Because we have the possibility, I said again, we have the possibility of losing our ability to be productive in it if the way we did things before is something that's suddenly taken away by automation, I would think.
Yes. And then you definitely are starting over. And in doing that start over, you've got to be able to do things that technology can't do well, right? The technology is all of a sudden not going to become stupid, right?
Right.
And it's so, how do I do things that technology can't do well? And we talked about what are those basically types of things. Okay, well, how do I learn that? Well, you got to be open-minded. You got to be a good learner. Okay, you got to manage what's going on in yourself. You got to bring inner peace to the game of work, where I'm quiet inside. All right. My mind is not chatterboxing me and not critiquing everything I'm saying or critiquing everything somebody is saying. I'm actually trying to listen. I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to do my job. I'm trying to find better ways to do my job. And that requires me to be open to the fact that maybe I don't have it all nailed down. So it's this adaptability thing that is the key, is how do we remain adaptable and still feel good about ourselves? And we will feel good about ourselves when we take control of ourselves, our internal controls. And it's work which never ends. Okay? I know people that have been on this journey decades. Some people, some of the smartest people I've been fortunate to meet the smartest people in the world. And when we talk about what I'm talking about with you, Steve, these people still today spend personal time every morning and every evening working on themselves, doing their practices and their tools, so that they basically, and it's a lot of it is many people do mindfulness meditation, which is learning how to be aware and take control of what's going on in your mind and body. It allows you to come to the table and with inner peace, and it helps you train your mind. But there are other ways also. Okay, how do I control my emotions? And the book teaches people, how do I generate positive emotions? Because positive emotions enable better learning. All right. How do I manage negative emotions? How do I basically stop the negative emotions, okay, from basically taking me down an avenue that's going to be a train wreck? All right. Etc. And I can remember early in my marriage, I was a young person. Everything. I was, not that it matters, but I mean, I was raised in rural Georgia, very humble background. I was highly motivated to be successful, to make my parents proud of me. And I took that up through education and took that up through the business world. And my wife, who's a scientist and a very smart person. One thing I did right, I married somebody smarter than I am. And
Nice.
We were having a conversation, and it was getting pretty heated. And she asked me this question: do you realize that you don't have to use that tone of voice and talk like that if you're upset? And I looked at her and says, what do you mean? She says, do you realize that you could take a couple of deep breaths and calm yourself and be able to ask questions, which I'll answer, but ask them in a way that doesn't basically show me that you're angry at me or think badly of me? I said, I've never heard that. She says, well, that's something you should work on. And you know what? She was right.
Nice.
Because when you feel, your feelings do not automatically have to become your behaviors. You can take ownership of your feelings and slow down, okay? You can calm your emotions with deep breathing exercises, or the power of pause, or do positive self-talk. You can generate positive emotions and come to the table with the proper mindset. And you can manage negative emotions, not just let them run free in our minds. All of this sounds sort of squishy, but it's mission critical when you are trying to basically have meaningful work and happiness in an age where the speed of change is going to be so huge, and the human flexibility, adaptability is so mission critical, and that requires you to take ownership of yourself and to work on being your best self. And it will be a lifelong job, but it will increase the probability you will have a job.
Such a good point. One of the things that I gotta ask here is, so if we're got to become a highly adaptive learner in order to survive, to be able to understand what it takes to be well in this world, and can you kind of outline again just what those foundational building blocks of the journey to best self are, so then we can talk about where we start?
The journey to the best self, really, where to start is to start with having a quiet ego and managing what's going on inside of you through mindfulness meditation. Some of the smartest people in the world are undertake meditation. Meditation has been around for thousands of years. All right, it's been based in the great religions and the great philosophies. And it's learning how to calm yourself. How do I come to the world with inner stillness, with that open mind, and the ability to actually see and understand and be calm, because I can learn better. So where do you start? You got to work on quiet ego and embrace the new SMART principles, humility. Then I would say start out with mindfulness meditation. Start out doing 3 minutes in the morning and 3 minutes at night. That will be very helpful. Start out using coherent breathing, or the Navy SEALs Box 4 breathing exercises, how to calm yourself down when you feel yourself emotionally getting riled or you feel energy overtaking you. And so it's these little tools, and you start out with 3 to 5 minutes in the morning, 3 to 5 minutes at night, and then as you work on, you build up, and you need to get to 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes at night. That's a very good point to get. And people that are really superstars get even higher than that. But it's the key is you have do daily practices using tools, and the book has 28 practices and tools which you can choose from. It has 35 workshops which helps you do these things and tells you how long to do them and how to keep track of yourself. And it all comes back to our biggest competition is ourself, and the science of deliberate practice. If you look at great athletes, especially when you look at the NBA, the National Basketball Association, almost every team in the National Basketball Association has an in-house meditation expert who helps their players. Okay. Same thing happens in other sports also. So you can, and getting this type of information, it's all in the book, but there's always ways to improve yourself. And so you start out, but you got to stick with it. And no one that I know of who has started out and stuck with it has ever said, this doesn't work, this doesn't make sense, this is not helping me. It's life-changing. And that's good, because the world is changing and work is changing. And we need to bring a different self to the table now. And the means are there. They're proven in science. It's not just, swishy stuff. It's science on how to basically manage ourselves. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes, it does. Very much so. One of the things that you've referred to a couple of different times is managing their emotions. And one of the things I wanted to get you to talk about a little bit is that I think sometimes this is where, when you mention humility and thinking about how we interact with each other and actually listening and such, that, we jump to conclusions, or we do the thing about we're actually not listening to them, because if we had been, maybe we would have heard what their intentions were, or whatever.
Yes.
I mean, I just think it's funny that there's so many things that interfere with us in how we interact, in following along with what you're saying, that because we want to jump in, or we want to solve the problem, or the ego's out of control because it's necessary for me to get the attention, not you. And I think that what's amazing to me is that when we talk about the possibilities of what our work world will be like, I mean, it's I'm a big fan of old cartoons, and there used to be this one called the Jetsons, And, George went to work and he pushed a button. That's all it did. He pushed this one button every day, and he would push it over and over and over again. And, he started it and stopped it, and then he did other things by pushing a button. And, sometimes I think that's kind of where we're getting to. But it's, the idea of controlling what we have, what we say, what we do. I think sometimes, it's like we almost feel like we have to be, I don't know, that's where our control comes from, is by being able to be confrontational with somebody, or even if it's not face-to-face confrontation, it's through how we do work. So if the computer's not doing that, I can see how we could easily walk ourselves out of a job if it's easier to work with the computer than it is with the person. Hopefully.
Well, I mean, in work going forward in most industries is going to be highly collaborative between human beings. And there's 5 major research studies that were done at MIT and at Carnegie Mellon, 2 great engineering and technology schools, all right, about collaboration. And the findings are, at least to me, were surprising. And they basically got teams of 5 people together, and they formed those teams with different ratios of men and women. And the goal was which teams were the best collaborators, which teams basically their output in their product was winners, okay? Who were the best collaborating teams? All 5 research studies found the following. Teams that had 5 women and 0 men were the best collaborators. The second best, 4 women, 1 man. The third best, 3 women, 2 men. Now, this is science. When I talk about this with men, their immediate reaction is, that's bad research. Okay. I mean, we know what's going on. But the fact of the matter is that women are more collaborative and open and making sure that everybody gets to speak and everybody is heard and everybody's view is considered, and that that coming together with the best answer is not usually one person's answer. And I'm a man, I worked in the business world a long time. I can remember when it was my time to talk, and I basically then stood up straight, put my elbows on the table, I leaned forward, and I started talking with emphasis, and maybe too fastly sometimes, but I was basically, on the journey to the smartest person in the room. Okay?
Nice.
And when somebody basically raised a question or whatever, I don't think I ever said, that's a good question, Jim. Let me think about that. I don't think I ever said that years ago. Of course, I'm a different person today. But I didn't, no. I mean, I leaned forward and okay. I just took a whack a little bit. Now I'm going to give him a double whack. And all of a sudden you got into the male competition. And that's not the way. It's not the way to work in the old world. In the world we are in today, with the smart technology, it's definitely not, because unless we can come up and think in ways differently than the technology can think, all right, we're going to be out of work, or do skills the technology can't do. Well, in order to do that, the game that I played when I was in the business world is out of date. If I went back in the business world today and started playing that game, I'd be gone.
Interesting.
And so we all have got to say, okay, new game, fast game. Competition really is technology in many cases, not other people. And the best way we can win is to basically learn how to think better, listen better, collaborate better. What does that require? Humility, open-mindedness, being a reflective listener, asking smart questions to learn, etc. Well, how do I do that? I got to come to the table with those being my goals. And I got to grade myself every day until I get this down, really down, so to speak, that it becomes part of me. So all this stuff that I'm talking about, which involves emotions and how you manage self, it really is the nuts and bolts of how to have meaningful work and happiness in the age of smart technology and fast radical change. And it's all science-based, and it's all been proven by other people. It's all been proven in organizations that have basically excelled better at doing this than other people. That's the challenge for all of us, is to, and it's easy to start. I mean, I've had students that have, when I've taught courses like this, I've had students who have walked away and said, thank you, Professor Hess. This is all very interesting and everything. I don't think I'm going to need it probably because, I'm going to so-and-so, this big consulting firm, and I'm, I said, okay, just keep it in mind. I can't tell you the number of people over the years who reached out to me after they've been in the business world 2, 3, 4 years. After they're getting their big degree, come back to me and says, thank you so much. I hit a wall and I started using your stuff. And now I am more successful. I am happier. I am, on a better path. I said, you don't have to thank me. Just give yourself a hug because you did all the hard work.
Oh, that's excellent. That's, I think that it is an adjustment. I mean, depending on what your role is. I mean, it's everything. A long time ago, I had a job when I was in college, I had a job at a McDonald's, and it was getting close to Thanksgiving time, and the manager said, okay, the owner wants to know what your thoughts are. Now, this McDonald's was close to a very big public university. And so it had a constant population of people wanting jobs and who wanted to go work there and so forth. And I'll never forget, I didn't think anything about it. The manager said, I'd like to know what your thoughts are about the time you might need off or something like that for the holidays. And then the owner will decide what you get. And, what happened was I submitted a letter, said, hey, I'd just like to be able to have part of Thanksgiving off. And if I could have a day or two somewhere around Christmas time, that would be great. And I said something like that. And it never dawned on me that some of the people that I was sitting with would say things like, hey, I'm going to be gone from this day until that day. And, it was very offensive to the owner because he basically said to everybody, he said, he had the manager say it. We didn't actually meet with the owner. He said, I got a lot of people mad at me because the guy started with me first. He said, he's going to give Steve whatever he wants because he said, hey, if I could just have a little bit of this time here and a little bit of that time there, that'd be great. He said, whereas the rest of you guys who said, I'm going to be gone from this time to this time, he said, you may not have a job when you come back. So you need to decide if you're going to tell me what you're going to do, if you'd like to ask me, that type of thing.
Yes. And you played it right, because you were trying to make sure that this worked for both sides.
Right, exactly.
Mutual working. And it's the other people, it's if you think about it, I don't know who they are or whatever, but if you think about it, it was ego.
Right.
It was ego taking over. Okay, I want this, and it starts with I.
Right.
Okay, not like, can we have a conversation? It would be very helpful for me because of this, for family reasons. If I had these days off or whatever, it's a very different way of working and being together. And what's so interesting about all of this human change stuff, I've talked about basketball players, but you look at great athletes, great warriors, musicians, artists, almost all of those people that are fit into those things that I have studied basically have done what you and I are talking about here. All right. It's that, okay. And what's so beautiful about this is that once you start seeing the results, you don't turn back. You only go forward and you go higher. And it's and that's not surprising, because almost everything I'm talking about, you look at the 7 great religions and you look at the great Eastern and Western philosophies, and you look at the science that's tested those philosophies, it's all the same. It's the pathway. The pathway has thousands of years of success behind it.
It's really amazing right now, because we're having to make adjustments to something that I think in just a short period of time made huge leaps and bounds. Because it was one thing for a little bit when we were watching, I think the company's, is it General Dynamics or something like that, the one up in Boston that was building the robots that can walk.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's one thing. And because you could watch the videos of them having issues too. They might be able to jump and hop and skip, and then suddenly they jump and hop and skip right off of whatever it was they were jumping and hopping and skipping on. But they're still working on all that. And, at the same time, if we give it some sort of thought or name it, we start thinking that it's reasoning. And I think that, I hope that that's the one thing we always can maintain over these technology changes that are happening, because it's pretty scary when you sit there and watch. You say to the AI, you say something like, "Can you write me a nice paragraph that has to do with I need to give a speech about the proper way to greet people at a door or something, or to greet people in the mornings or something like that," and it will suddenly come up with something, and then you can get more specific about what it talks about and things like this, and the next thing you know is it's written it for you. Now, it has some problems, and it forgets itself, or I forget what they called it. They've actually created a name for it when it all of a sudden writes something that's not part of what you were asking it to do. But for the most part, it's a scary place where it started from. There's a movie from the late 60s that I love to quote or talk about, and unfortunately I'm getting to a point where a lot of people are going, what? What? I don't know if I've seen that one or not. And you're like, oh God, you're killing me, man. But in 2001: A Space Odyssey, there's a whole section where it deals with Hal and Dave, and Hal is the onboard computer, and they're in space, and Hal decides that it doesn't need Dave any longer, and Dave tries to protect himself and loses. And I think and whether you become more modern and you have Skynet with the Terminator movies and stories, or you have whatever, I think there's a thought in there that, are we creating something that's going to, if it's going to make it difficult for us to, it's going to make life better, but at the same time, is it going to make it where we have to think differently about the jobs that we do and how we keep them, or what they'll turn into? How do you talk to someone when you think about, because a big fear right now is that some of our jobs are going to be eliminated because of where we are with the technology. What do you say to somebody about, as we're kind of summing up what you've been talking about, what's in your book, Own Your Work Journey? How do you talk to them about surviving in that world? What would be something specifically you say there?
Well, you are correct. There's going to be automation, and there could be a lot of automation. And so the question people have to ask themselves is, how easy is it for technology to do what I'm doing? And the answer is pretty easy. Okay, what am I good at doing, or what would I like to do, or how do I figure out what I can do where I can add value in ways the technology can't add value, at least for the near future, since technology is going to continue to advance. And those types of conversations and thinking, and generally speaking, the consensus is there's 3 buckets. Right? Being able to think in ways that technology can't think, and that's innovative thinking, creative thinking, going into the unknown and exploring, etc. And then the next one is high emotional engagement with other human beings. Yes, technology is going to be able to have little robots in your house that talk to your children or talk to you, and have a conversation, but it's not going to be able to emotionally connect and have iterative conversations in the workplace. Right? So and then the third line is the trade jobs that require iterative exploration of defining the problem plus manual dexterity. Okay, lots of dexterity, bending, doing this, going underneath this, which will be hard for robots. So it's that, and diagnosing the problem and then iteratively trying different ways to fix it. Right? Those are the 3 skills which there seems to be that are bought into by many people smarter than I am about which way to go. So, yes, there's going to be human jobs where you're working with people and the issues are emotional, or it's emotionally based, and that's going to be different than a job where basically you're either manufacturing something, and even now, what's so mind-boggling about this new technology is the point that you made. This new technology is going to basically, and this is new and no one's really thought about it, is really going to impact lawyers, judges, book writers. Okay, this technology, you can, and you've done it, I've done it. I've used it and said, I want to give a talk about this and everything to this type of audience. Give me some advice. It's less than 5 seconds. I've got a printout.
It's cool.
And it's like, whoa, this is pretty good. Now let me see if I can upset it. All right. Well, no, I don't like this point because I'm afraid of this, that someone would be offended. What would you do to eliminate that? Boom, it comes back. And so I'm sitting here thinking, I mean, as you said, I've written 15 books. I mean, number 15 may be the last one because technology may be writing the book next time. In fact, one of the best books on the technology is written by Reid Hoffman, who was one of the co-founders of LinkedIn and was one of the early investors in OpenAI. It's his book, and the authors of the book are Reid Hoffman with GPT-4. And he wrote the book asking the technology questions and iterating the answers. And it's like unbelievable. I mean, so this technology is mind-boggling.
You got that right.
I mean, you're gonna have CEOs, military leaders saying to the technology, here's the situation. This is the points I want to make. Please give me a 15-minute, 20-minute, whatever speech that I can give to this group. And then they're going to read it through and they're going to do what you do and do what I do. How about this? Is there a way to change this or whatever? You iterate. But it's like, and think about it. There have been people who've earned a nice livelihood writing those speeches for people, right?
You got that right.
Yeah.
It's a crazy thing.
Those people can't do it in 3 to 5 seconds.
No.
Those people don't have access to the jillions of data that the technology does.
That's right? Crazy.
They got their views. So if you think about where that is going, I mean, our school systems and how we educate our students, it's got to change at a pace much faster than probably school systems. And that goes from, kindergarten all the way through PhDs. You're going to see the whole education system is going to be transformed by this. And the countries that get it right the fastest are going to be the countries that are going to have the best thinkers that can work with technology.
Boy, does that make sense? This is an interesting world that we're in now, and and you're talking about the path to making it something that you can thrive and be good in. And I got to ask you this question: if you had a chance to be the keynote closing speaker at a conference of educational leaders, what is something that you would want them thinking about when they left your talk?
That's a good question. Are we and am I really preparing our students to be highly adaptive learners who can learn, unlearn, and relearn at the speed of technological change? And I guess if there was a second one, are we and am I using proven tools and daily practices that will help our students to learn how to think in ways technology can't think, to excel at managing their emotions and learning how to build caring, trusting, positive emotional relationships with others to become their best self? So are we preparing highly adaptive learners and helping people become their best self?
Love it. Great, good stuff right there. There's so much to think about, and that's something we gotta be taking into consideration in our schools and such. Ed, I gotta ask you this: do you do speaking engagements? I mean, seriously?
Yes, I do.
Very cool. So, if someone wanted to reach out to you, learn more, connect with you, where would you send them?
They can go to reach me personally to my email, which is se@darden, darden.virginia.edu. If they wanted to look at the new book, the website is www.ownyourworkjourney.com. They wanted to find out more about me. It's www.edhess.org. So I'm pretty easily reachable.
Very much so. And I'll put that information in the show notes, and which is really cool that you have those separate pages as well, because that really helps focus. Ed, I can't thank you enough for talking with me today. Anyone who's thought of giving up, feels lost, should read your book. Anyone who's thinking about how am I going to survive in this world or what's coming, I mean, everyone should read your book. I mean, Own Your Work Journey, The Path to Meaningful Work and Happiness in the Age of Smart Technology and Radical Change. What an incredible book. Thank you so much. Wishing you the best in all you do.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for a great conversation. We were a great collaborative team.
Hey, you have been listening to Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12, a podcast to help you help kids achieve their dreams. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is a member of the Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is a member of the podcast network based in Canada called Voice Ed Radio. Voice Ed Radio, your voice is right here. The opinions expressed on Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 are those of the guests and host. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is intended to share ideas, advice, and suggestions. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is produced for educational purposes. Hey, thanks for listening. It would be awesome if you visited my website at stephenmiletto.com and connected with me, left a review, and listened to more episodes. And by the way, you could also share it with your friends, with your family, and your colleagues. Thanks so much. You're awesome.